Dear everyone, it's great to see so many of you here. Our main guest is still not here, but should be here in a few minutes, so we'll just start. Welcome to this fourth debate on the role of video games in our contemporary culture. When the Frittwood Foundation launched the project Digital Lives, we set out trying to answer a simple question, namely, why is it that while video games are becoming increasingly more popular, important and sophisticated, the same cannot be said of public debate concerning this genre. In Norway, we recently witnessed a decline in video games journalism in the mainstream media, and this has had the effect of relinquishing key debates about social impacts, industry conditions and quality to niche media read by a dedicated but rather small subset of the general public. And this development also influences how we as a society talk and think and discuss about games and the people who enjoy them. A video game culture is vibrant and varied. In the last couple of weeks only, several projects have been launched that support this statement and illustrate the many overlaps between digital forms of expression and culture in a more traditional sense. The Norwegian Science Museum, Norsk Teknisk Museum, recently opened Game On 2.0, an exhibition on the history of video games, originally curated by the Barbican in London. And the Norwegian Opera premiered the new opera Elysium a few weeks ago, where man's relationship to technology is the key theme. And it's against this backdrop that the Frittwood Foundation seeks to promote and encourage a bit more lively and informed debate concerning video games and the role they play. These debates are one part of the project, and I'm very happy as director of Frittwood that so many people have been here. And you are welcome also to other of our events. Our call for submissions to a digital anthology on games will be published to be published in the summer of this year is another part of the project. And the deadline is April the 15th, and you are all invited to take part. Gamers, journalists, researchers, game developers and others. To write about what video games mean to you and what video games mean for society also. And in this collection of digital essays, we welcome more debate and more independent criticism and reflection from bold writers willing to reflect around video games in new ways. And we are looking for original and open-minded and critical approaches to digital art, technology and digital storytelling. And hopefully this anthology can also supply the public debate with new and exciting voices. So, a special welcome to the panel and soon to our main guest. You have all come here today to contribute with your well-informed opinions and approaches to the topic of storytelling in and across different genres, mediums and technologies. So we all look forward to being inspired and enlightened, and please take part in the discussions. Thank you very much and welcome again. And Martin, it's all yours.
Our first guest is a narrative designer on the upcoming Arcane Studios game Dishonored 2. In the past, she's written about video games for places like Kotaku, The New Statesman, Rock, Paper, Shotgun, Vice, and The Guardian. In 2014, she left her home in Edinburgh to visit and live with game designers around the globe for 1 year. She survived, and she's with us tonight. Reading from her award-winning book, Embed With Video Games, please welcome Cara Ellison.
I actually have a copy of the book ready with me, so I might just try and explain a little bit about what it is that I did.
Well, I can find it.
Okay, you can have a coffee, but yeah, so I basically didn't really know what I was doing when I started out, because I was doing a lot of journalism and I was writing about games, but it was kind of criticism and not really like reviews or anything like that, so I wasn't really making that much money, because you don't really make that much money writing video game reviews. So video game criticism, but you can do it full time on staff if you've got like some kind of news chops or whatever. And I just never was interested in writing, video game news. So I don't know, I just became popular on the internet, and then I was very tipsy one night, and I just went on Twitter and I was like, what if I did this like weird idea? And everyone was like, I would pay for that, I would read that. And so eventually, because I was very tipsy, I wrote up this thing on Patreon saying, oh, I would like to go and visit people because I'm tired of like the press junkets of it only being like 30 minutes long and you can only ask so many PR bullet points. And so, everyone just backed me, and I said, oh, if it gets over $1,000, it'll never get over $1,000. If it gets over $1,000, I'll like leave home and like not have any rent and just be traveling all the time. And I just put it up thinking, oh, this will never ever happen. And then in like 2 hours, it was way over $1,000, and I basically made myself homeless. And it was a total accident, and it was really thrilling but really scary at the same time, and I didn't tell my mum for a week. So anyway, it kind of worked out, and you can see the beautiful cover that Irene Coe made for the whole thing, because after a year, I had enough material to put it together into a book, and everyone pestered me to make a book out of it. So, and it's doing really well. So, I will read you a little bit from it if you would like.
See.
Maybe I should I read the introduction that Kieran wrote for it? Is that a good introduction to it? Or?
Oh no, I think just, how many here are kind of familiar with Cara's work?
Oh, not that many. Oh, this is good.
Oh, this is good. I think you should read something that you're...
Okay. What's your favorite chapter?
Oh, I just played Sybil, so maybe...
Oh, Sybil? Okay.
Nina?
Okay. So this is like this is part of the chapter that's a little bit sexy. So if you're a little bit, faint of heart, it's okay to leave. So it starts out, I went to Brooklyn, New York to visit Nina Freeman, who's currently making a game called Sybil. If you're familiar with Sybil at all, it's out already, and I think it actually won a prize at the IGF this year, which is super great. But she was making it when I stayed with her. It's an autobiographical game about Nina's experience of having sex for the first time with someone she met through an online game. The game uses real film sequences and sections of an MMO-like game to tell an emotionally difficult story, one of flirtation and betrayal. The art from the game, made by Rebecca Dunlap, is interspersed throughout this article. The header image of Nina was lovingly drawn by New York-based illustrator Elizabeth Simmons. We sit slumped side by side, close to each other, in Nina Freeman's Brooklyn apartment. We are pre-game drunk. It is too hot. We can't afford to put the air conditioning on. Our skin has a glazed sheen. We wear the least amount of clothes possible. It's smothering, like sleeping restless between tropical sheets. Williamsburg presses humid fingers on our thighs, and we are gazing at Usher. We say nothing and we do nothing, and our hands are limp on the couch. Usher is singing about how no one kisses like us. Nina's long-term boyfriend, Emmett, is due to come home tonight. High cheekbones, broad shoulders, handsome grin. And I can feel the tension try to dissipate from this fact. I am jealous of her real estate. Terraces and terraces of this part is mine. The last time I had sex, the weather was hot, but at least there were no exhausting humidity. The last time I had sex seems like a Grand Canyon away, because the man in the video should stop dancing. Usher is shirtless, and he purrs on the screen. The video tempts us by cutting away. He touches his body when he dances to suggest that we cannot. I think about what Nina is thinking. I think about whether Nina is thinking about Usher like I am thinking about Usher. I'm thinking about whether she is thinking about how our sexuality is being manipulated by this video. Does Usher know he is binding us up like a thread around a finger? I want him to know exactly how. I want him to receive push notifications, objectifying notifications. I want him to get mindfuck notifications that vibrate his phone off the table every time we think something filthy about this video. I want him to know that Nina Freeman and I are sitting here mindfucking him, weak from the New York heat. I know Nina is thinking this way because Emmett has been away. And in this weather, we have mostly been talking about how we like it, games and otherwise. She has lent me a book entitled The Ethical Slut. I guess Nina is famous for making games about sexuality by now, or she should be. But this new game she is making, Sybil, it has been playing with me rather than me playing with it. I have come to understand very quickly that Nina and I are very similar. Our obsessions with the personal being important, the lists of men we might make fuck plans about, our opinions about emotional terrorism, our experiences in teaching, our backgrounds in poetry and literature, our anxieties about being a woman, being ambitious, punching a hole through the grip of an industry moulded like men want it. It has become a sort of joke in my head. We feel small and alone, and we make things that we want to make to feel big. Later, we'd sit in a sake bar, pulling our hair and poring over the war map of an industry that finds us inscrutable. Usher would get it, I conclude. It seems like a feeble statement, so I say it again. Usher would get it. And Nina laughs. And that's the introduction to that chapter.
All right. So, that's a bit different than a lot of other writing about video games.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that some people are really put off by it because they want something very dry and very much like, here are the game systems, and this is the way that this is how many levels there are, and how many graphics there are, and things like that. And I don't know, I just got really bored of writing that kind of thing very quickly. And so I eventually just decided I was going to write about how games fit into my life and how they might enrich them, and about other people who that happens to too. And I just feel like that's really interesting, because the interesting thing for me about games is like people and like how people interact with them. And they don't necessarily have to stand by themselves. I think without a reader, a book is nothing, and without a player, a game is nothing. If there were no player there to experience the game doesn't even matter. So, I don't know, I just was more interested in the things around about the game, really. So, yeah.
So it's, but going back to your original idea, I mean, you wanted to stay with different game creators, live on their couches.
I got a really bad back problem from doing that. I actually spent maybe like 12 months, or actually more than 12 months, because I was still homeless at the end of it, so I had to find a job at the end of it, so I was still staying on couches. And so I got this thing that I like to call couch back, which is just when you're kind of like this the entire day because you've been sleeping on someone's couch. So, but yes, it was kind of rough and very sort of psychologically hard as well as quite physically hard to do.
So what are your reasons for, you're basically inserting yourself into these people's lives?
Yeah.
Why is that the best, for you, the best course of action when you're writing about video games?
Well, like I said, it's really hard to get anything honest out of someone when you've got 30 minutes of a press junket and they're, the PR tells them to only cover a particular thing. And it's less likely that will happen if you get someone who's an independent game designer who just makes their own games and then puts them out and has no kind of PR process. But also I said to myself, well, if independent game developers have the ability to just say whatever they like about their own games, maybe they themselves don't actually know what it is that's interesting about their game because they're so inside of the game that they can't see outside of that. And so I kind of said to myself, well, wouldn't it be interesting if I just kind of hung around for a while and then sort of tried to see what I thought was like an interesting, I guess, insight into their process. And like, I also just kind of wanted to know about how their environment was affecting them. So I wanted to know why, for example, Nina made these games about sexuality, and I think partly because sexuality in New York in particular is very it's quite rough. it's kind of like people are very impatient with each other in New York, and there's no, the dating scene is quite ruthless in that if you didn't enjoy one date, you would just dismiss that person immediately and never see them ever again. Whereas I think in many other places, people are a little bit more patient with each other. I feel like if people sleep with someone and they're in New York and they live in New York, then there's no kind of politeness kind of process, which I think in the UK at least, I feel like would be slightly more polite to do with the dating sort of system. But that's probably because British people are more or considered more polite. And we have this like weird politeness, rigidity, or whatever.
You might marry out of politeness.
Well, exactly. It's just basically you can't say no to someone, so you just kind of eventually go, okay, then let's get married. But yeah, so yeah. But in New York, it's quite brutal, and I feel like for Nina in particular, sexuality is quite brutal, and so that comes out in her games a lot. And I don't know. I definitely feel like a lot of the environment goes into, the developers live in, goes into their games. So that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of stay with them.
Were there other instances where this kind of connection between environments and the game played into it?
Well, a funny story actually. I started to realize that game developers' bathrooms seem to say something about them as developers. I don't know why, but I remember staying in Tim Rogers' apartment, and Tim Rogers lives in Oakland in California, and he has a shower curtain that just is the main aesthetic of his game, Video Ball. It's honestly just like a bunch of like circles that are different, like kind of cute pastel colors, and that is really the main aesthetic of his game. And every morning when I use the bathroom to brush my teeth, I would think to myself, did he take the game idea from this shower curtain? And I started to realize that actually like there are like these kind of quirky things that exist in game developers' houses that they do take inspiration from. And I thought that was quite adorable, that a lot of it was from bathrooms.
Yeah. No, but I mean, bathrooms are great.
I mean, you spend a lot of time in a bathroom. I mean, you wash there, you may do other things there. It's great. So yeah, obviously, there's definitely, if you want to influence a game developer, put something weird in their bathroom is what I think you should do.
And about influencing people, I know in your book you live with them for so long, and some of them have, I guess, thinner skin than others.
Yeah.
And you kind of fret about your influence on them.
Right, so I talk about, is anyone familiar with the Star Trek Prime Directive? Okay, good. Because I had this kind of weird crisis when I was staying with Liz Ryerson, because she makes this amazing electronic music, and she made music for the Mirror Moon EP and for Dysphoria and a number of other like small indie games, and she's like really talented. But I stayed with her, and I had this kind of weird feeling like sometimes I would say, oh, I think your music is really, really great, and I think you could make, like a real career for yourself, like of doing more of the music instead of less of the game design. And she took a few days and then came back and was like, I think I'm going to move to New York and then make a go of my, making music. And I absolutely cracked it. I was like, oh, I've influenced her life path, and now that's all she's going to do for the rest of her years is just make this music. And what if it's all my fault that it doesn't work out? And then it started to spiral. And so I started thinking a lot about the Star Trek Prime Directive. You're supposed to observe, but not affect anything. But the thing is there's the observer effect, which is that the fact that you are being observed in some way is taken into account by the person who's being observed. And so that is always going to affect your outcome. So yeah, the fact that I was close to these people was definitely one of the things that I think they were taking into account, because I started to think, oh, are they performing game developer for me? Or are they, are they playing a role for me? Or are they just, is this exactly what they would say to anyone else, So there's a lot of stuff to take into account where I started to get really kind of in my own head about it. Harvey Smith, who he's obviously responsible for amazing games like Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex, and Dishonored. I went to stay with him, and he told me to watch Almost Famous. And I don't know if you're familiar with Almost Famous. It's basically a movie about touring with the band. It's about a journalist who tours with the band, and basically he has the same kind of weird crisis where he's like, Lester Bangs is on the phone with him, and he's like, don't be friends, don't make friends with them, don't make friends with them. Then you're not going to do, that's not useful as a journalist to make friends with someone. And I'm like, but I don't know if I'm making friends with these people or whether they hate me. It's like really hard to tell. So there's a lot of that kind of, I guess, kind of psychological sort of wrestling with what it is that your role is, which was interesting to experience, I think.
So, any commonalities between games, like the stories they tell in their games? Is there any kind of common thread running through it?
Yeah, I kind of conclude at the end. I kind of write a conclusion because I feel like it's needed, where I say, really the thread that runs through all of these interesting people and their interesting games is that I don't think that they're actually making games primarily for commercial reasons. And I'm not sure many people do make them primarily for commercial reasons. I mean, you might over the years. I started out my career at Rockstar North in Edinburgh when we were making GTA 4. And there are a lot of people who've been there for years and years and years and years and do consider it just a job. And they're obviously the most talented people in the business, but they've got to this stage where now it's like a function that they perform, where they are, they go to work every day and then debug like a bunch of stuff, and then that's their job, and it's not really a calling anymore. But all of the people I covered, they were making games for the love of it. They wanted to express something that made them feel fulfilled. And in particular, I think Nina Freeman actually kind of summed it up when she said that she wants to feel validated by someone else playing her game and having the same experience that she had when she basically designs so that other people can feel a certain thing that she felt at a particular moment. And I think most game designers design for that reason, is they want someone else to feel the way they did at a particular point in life. Even if it's kind of recreating how they felt about a game that they played when they were very young, they're still creating that game and designing that game so that someone else can experience a similar feeling, I think. The feeling that they want from a game. And I think that's really valuable. I think games as expression is very undervalued. And I think a lot of people make them purely because they want to express themselves and express something to the core of their being. And so that comes very strongly through, I think, a lot of the games that I covered.
So, in writing personally about video games, in kind of trying to find different paths to writing about video games, we have a writing contest going about video games. I was wondering, any advice for people who want to write about video games?
Writing about video games? Okay. I think it's really important to cultivate a strong voice. I think one of the reasons that people come back to read me is because I'm really unusual and weird. And normally I wouldn't regard that as being a compliment, but I think when you're a writer, you need to cultivate a voice that stands out from other people, because otherwise you kind of meld in with everyone else, and people don't really come to read your particular byline. They'll come to just read a publication itself. I think it's really important to kind of try and cultivate a voice that really is yours and is specifically yours, and don't be afraid to have an opinion that might be completely different to everyone else. Even though the internet hates that person. It's actually really interesting to read someone who hated a game that you loved. I think it's much more interesting and informative for me, particularly as a designer now, to read about a game experience that someone else had where they hated something that I really liked, or they really loved something that I totally hated. For example, I'm not really on board with Life is Strange. I didn't really like it very much because I thought the writing, like the actual dialogue, was kind of, I don't know, stodgy or unimpressive in some way. Hella rubbish, or hella, I don't know. But the rest of the actual structure of Life is Strange, the way it's actually constructed in terms of it has the rewind mechanic and it has a number of interesting strands that you can go off into. Those things are interesting, and many of my peers love Life is Strange. They absolutely love it. They love the episodic structure of it. They really, really love how it's about two young girls and their relationship. They really love how it's about like quite an edgy topic that is very difficult to cover with video games, and it's also quite emotional in some ways. And it also has that kind of television hook at the end of the episode where you're like, dun dun dun, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And so there's a lot of things about it that are great, and I only learned about those things in conversation with other friends who really loved a game that I totally hate. So I think those two things are very, very important, apart from, you know, the spelling and grammar and whatever, pitching, I don't know. But yeah, definitely those two things are things I look for in someone.
And of course, if you're a good video games writer, you're going to get really rich.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm so rich. No, I feel a lot like writing in general is underpaid because people presume that everyone can write these days. Everyone has a blog, you know. No one needs to hire a writer to do anything. But honestly, you really notice the difference between someone who is a professional writer and someone who thinks that they can be a really great professional writer, but they're not quite there yet. And I think definitely experience is one of those things that you look for in a writer, because you have to be rejected in a horrible manner over and over and over again in order to become a good writer, I think. And yeah, you definitely need someone who's going to persist and become good at what they do. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth paying for a good writer.
And now you quit journalism.
I did quit journalism because it wasn't paying me very much. But also because I got this wonderful opportunity, because actually way before I stayed with Harvey Smith, Harvey played a game of mine called Sacrilege. Yeah,
I thought we could do a quick play of Sacrilege.
Okay.
And
the audience can choose.
The audience can choose, and Tonya here has not played Sacrilege. She doesn't know what it is, and she will read the text.
Okay.
So, I guess we'll just have a kind of shouting to choose between the options.
The crowd heaves. The bass of the music. You can feel it vibrate through your fingertips. Warm feeling of rum. Sticky on your throat. Ice cracks in the glass. You put lime to your lips and bite. Turn ravenously to regard the dance floor.
You can just click that one, okay?
I just click that one?
Yeah. Okay. You don't go home with strangers in case you end up dismembered in a freezer. This means that here, there are only these three options. Matthew, John, Mark, Luke.
So who do you think we should choose? Has anyone played this before? No. Oh, two people. Okay. Who do you think we should choose? People who have played before.
The Baptist.
John then, right?
John? John's the most boring one, but okay, let's go for John.
Okay. You turn siren eyes to John. John is tall. Dresses smart. Has a kind smile. Initiate, fuck, plan, or I could do better?
Oh, I can do better.
I can do better. Okay. Let's do better than John. I think we should go for Matthew.
Matthew is tall. Disheveled. He makes you laugh.
Oh.
Initiate, fuck, plan.
Yeah, let's do it.
You grab Matthew's shoulder and yell his name ecstatically. Matthew!
This is a real life experience.
The lights sparkle. The music is loud. You both whirl around bashing people in the elbows. What are you doing here? I'm observing small dresses for science. You grin. You look hot, he says, appreciatively. Do I also look hot? You look like Matthew with glow sticks on, like a sort of glow stick holder Matthew. Would you sleep with such a man? I definitely would. I mean, we would certainly be able to see what we were doing with all the glow sticks. He's going to kiss you. He's going to kiss you. He is going to kiss you. What are you doing? Kiss him back. Your boot is vibrating. Investigate.
Which one are you going to go for?
I'm hearing more investigate.
Okay, investigate.
You dig out your phone from your boot. It's Patty. Text message reads, that guy's married. 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 Abort the dickhead. Fuck this dickhead.
Go for it.
You want to go for it? Okay.
Okay. You are a shitty fuck queen. You have morals. You can't fuck him. Did I press one more? No. This is why you're not the hero of your own life. Because anyone glamorous would do it for the story later. You can't. Failure. Failure.
Alright.
And we're back.
So it kind of continues a little bit.
And this is how you get hired for Dishonored 2.
Yeah, so it's interesting actually because Twine, that was made during with an engine called, a text engine called Twine. And it's free and you can download it on the internet. And I just became interested in it. And actually, I think a few AAA studios now actually accept submissions of work from writers in Twine, just because it's a really good way of demonstrating that you understand how variables work and branching works and how succinct writing works. So it's actually quite an interesting one where I think a lot of studios now have actually come around to thinking that Twine is a good kind of prototype for actual like bigger narrative stories. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, so Harvey Smith played it and really loved it. And he got in touch with me and he said, could you do some writing samples for us because we really want to hire you. And I was like, oh my god! And I ran around my room for a while, and then I wrote the writing samples, and then I did an interview with Arcane, which lasted an hour and was really nerve-wracking. And Harvey Smith, who made Deus Ex, was interviewing me, and it was scary.
What does Harvey Smith ask you? I mean, you've already been interviewing him, right? At this point.
No, I didn't interview him until later. So I actually interviewed for the Dishonored job way before I actually wrote about him or ever spoke to him.
So what does he ask you?
So he asked me a lot of structural questions about my reaction to Dishonored and how I might improve Dishonored. But one of the most interesting questions he asked me was if you ever wanted to design a game or be on a design team for a particular game, which game would that be? And I said something that Harvey Smith had never heard of, which I think is probably a bad thing, but everyone else on the team had heard of it because I said Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Has anyone played it? It's wonderful, right? It's really great. Super buggy, a mess, really hard to get to run. I think you need to download like 5 patches to get to run now. But there's an amazing community around it, and they still look after it, and they still patch it up. Because it's wonderful, and it's just this incredible mess of a game, but it's got real atmosphere, and all the characters seem really different from each other. And one of the greatest things about that game is that characters lie to you and disagree with you, and that's really hard to do in a big video game, because I think that now people regard characters as being like quest givers, and they're always in service to the player. And I don't really go for the idea that characters should only fluff the player character up. I just think that's ridiculous. I think you want a game where the people in it feel real, and they feel like they're trying to wriggle out of your grasp somehow. They're trying to get away from you because they're not there for you. You're trying to get something from them, and it should be hard. So yeah, that game, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, is wonderful because you get set up in it, you get sent away on these quests to get things that, I mean, there's a horrific section of it where it's just, you have to go into this haunted hotel, and I just hate that mission because it's so terrifying. And then you come back with this necklace or whatever it is this person wanted, and they're like, just throw it over their shoulder, and they're like, whatever. And I'm like, don't you know what I did to get this for you? But yeah, so I think that game is really, really great, particularly because it actually focuses on making characters into people, and really interesting people. And it's really well written. But now that I think about it, I don't know if I'd want to work on it, because apparently it was stressful and horrible, and Troika shut down afterwards, so so that's probably not the best idea. But anyway, that one.
Yeah. So, and that's how you got hired.
Well, I did the interview maybe, I think, a year or a year and a half maybe before I actually worked on the game. So they actually hired someone else instead of me first, and it was mainly because she was already in the company, I think, and that she was nearby. She was living nearby in France. And she is completely amazing at her job, and she is one of the main writers on Dishonored 2. And so they employed her first because it was really convenient, but possibly because she was much better than me. It's only a possibility, you understand. But yes, and then a year later, Harvey was like, actually, we want more, we want a second opinion, and we want more dialogue, so can you come along? And so I did, but I worked there for a couple months, and then I managed to kind of read through the whole script and like give my feedback on it, and like try and shape like some things, and I did some dialogue, and I wrote some like in-game texts, and so that was all finished like really quickly, because it was pretty much done by the time I got there. They have a huge narrative team. There's obviously Harvey, who's like incredible and has been a writer on video games, like big name video games, for most of his later life. And then there's the voice of Shodan. So the woman who is the voice of the heart in Dishonored, she was also the voice of Shodan, who was obviously a System Shock classic. Bad lady, bad guy, bad lady.
No cheers for Shodan?
Shodan's amazing. And she wrote lines for the heart in Dishonored. And she's back on Dishonored 2. So she's like an incredible lady who I love and I'm enthralled by. And there's also one or two other people in the studio as well. So I just came along and did, whatever Harvey asked me to, and yeah, so I finished up quite early in 2015, and I then immediately got another job writing a script for another AAA video game that I can't talk about.
That you can't talk about. It's all the excitement in the world. So we're gonna just talk a bit more about Dishonored later, but first we're gonna go to some quick questions from the audience before we bring up the rest of our panel. If we have any questions. What was the worst couch you stayed on when you were traveling?
Worst couch I stayed on? I always feel like these questions are really mean because you always have to like end up being mean to someone. Do you know what the most extraordinary like attempt to get me to come and stay was I said to Liz, I really want to come stay with you. I want to write about your work. And she said, well, I don't really have anywhere for you to like sleep. You could come along and write about me, but I don't have anywhere for you to sleep. And I said, oh, well, I don't really want to put you out, and like, you know, your flatmates might get mad with me trying to sleep on the floor somewhere. So it's okay, I'll find someone else. And she said, no, I will find you somewhere. So she actually asked she chucked a flatmate out of the house so that I could sleep in her bed. And because her flatmate has a boyfriend, and she's like, well, she has a boyfriend, so she can go and stay over there, and then you can stay here for a week. So I did. I stayed on this girl's mattress on the floor because it was like this big, it was like kind of like a dormitory style like kind of thing where like there's 3 mattresses to a room and everyone's staying in this room. So I stayed there. And actually one morning, it was this big old creaking Californian house, and it must have had like a kind of hole in the wall somewhere, because one morning I woke up and there was some like ants crawling across me. And I was like, oh, hey guys. Maybe I should clean up these biscuit crumbs, you know? But yeah, I had a good time there, but I felt really bad about chucking someone out of the house so I could stay there. So that was obviously something that I'm quite grateful for. And I didn't get couch back because I stole someone's bed.
All right. Anyone else? In the back.
What was the most quirky thing you saw at the game developers' places?
Like the weirdest thing?
Yeah.
God, they're all really weird. Let me think. So, I guess the weirdest place I stayed was with Tim Rogers, because he's just like an eccentric man in general, and he has a collection of Care Bears, and they're really adorable. And I think it's because one of his ex-girlfriends was really into Care Bears. And so he just started collecting Care Bears. And now he has loads of Care Bears. And when I first got there, he was like, here's the couch, here's a pillow, here's your Care Bear. And I was like, okay. And so I spent the majority of my time there actually hugging a Care Bear to sleep. Because I thought it might be really offensive if I didn't, you know? So I was like, is this the etiquette? Maybe I should hug this Care Bear. So yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to be really polite to people in case, you know, I was being a nuisance. So yeah, I hugged a Care Bear for maybe just under a month. So that was fun.
All right, anyone else? Or we'll go to, okay, J-Dog.
How did you choose which developers to visit? And how long do you stay with each developer?
That's a really good question. It comes up quite a lot. People ask me a lot, like, how do you choose? And I guess it's a kind of negotiation between my own taste, like what I'm really curious about personally and like interested in. Which turns out actually the majority of the people I covered were making games that were actually non-violent, which I think indicates that maybe I'm tired of violence in some manner, but I mean, I helped make Dishonored 2, which is about murdering. But, so it's obviously not entirely true, but it's also kind of interesting that I chose quite non-violent systems of games. Like there's a game about sexuality, and there's a game about finding yourself, and there's a game about, it's like Tim was making a game about sports, and then someone else is making an RPG about magic. And then there's Downwell, which is about a boy who goes down a well with guns for boots, guns on his boots. Downwell, by the way, is incredible also, a wonderful game, and I spoke to the creator. I think I actually discovered the creator of it, but I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to know. But anyway, so yeah, I think that the negotiation was, who will let me stay first? Because that's a really difficult prospect. You don't, I think even a normal person who isn't craving any press attention would be kind of weirded out by someone wanting to come and live in their house and write about them and their lives. I just think that they would think it's weird. And a lot of developers said, you want to do what? No, you can't come here. What? Don't do that. No, no, no. And it's, you know, some people are shy and some people are busy and some people are just like, hate me. So, so obviously there were lots of no's. I asked Misu Kandiker, who made Red Shirt, and she said no because she was just massively busy and was busy kind of finishing her game. So there's a ton of people who said no. So yes, the first one is, will they say yes to my weird proposition? Secondly, do they have room for me? Do they have time for me? You know, like Liz, I felt like I was, you know, imposing myself a little bit until she insisted. So there's a lot of that. There's also, like, I wanted to be very diverse. I wanted to actually cover people who were not your usual developer, I guess. So I went out of my way to find women. So there's actually over half of the developers I covered are women, which was much easier than you think. And there was also my need to go around the world much more than stay, because everything's very Western based, I would say. And I actually considered going to see Might and Delight. I think they're based in Stockholm. But I didn't eventually kind of get to Scandinavia, which I accept as a discrimination. But yeah, I felt like I was staying too much in the West in the beginning, so I then very quickly went down to Amsterdam and then across to Malaysia, and then I got to Malaysia and then I stayed in Malaysia and then Singapore, Japan, and then went down to Australia. So that was also a consideration, which is I wanted to choose people who were quite far away from each other, would have really, really different influences. But yeah, it did all eventually come down to, are you free next month? Do you want me to live in your house? That was it, really. Do you want me to write about you? Have you read my writing? Some people hadn't even read my writing and had no idea what I was doing there. They were like, who are you? So, I mean, that was another thing.